Welcome back to Hold 'em Accountable, where we cut through the political noise and get straight to the truth. No spin, no filters, definitely no free passes. Today, we're sitting down with Blythe Potter, Democratic candidate for Indiana Secretary of State. This is one of the most important offices in the state. It's the gatekeeper for our elections, our businesses, and frankly, our democracy. The person in this role decides how easy or how hard it is for Hoosiers to vote, how transparent our elections are, and how much accountability our system truly has. Blythe has made election integrity, voter access, and government transparency the cornerstones of her campaign. And today we're going to dig into all that, from expanding early voting to modernizing Indiana's election systems, maybe even tackling a few uncomfortable truths about how politics really works in our state. So grab a cup of coffee or something stronger, because it's time to talk about accountability really looks like in Indiana. Blythe, welcome to Hold 'em Accountable. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
As always, it is a pleasure to see you. Done many things together. Um,
It's been
so
an eventful few years.
exactly. So let's jump into the questions. You've run for office before at the local level and now
Yep.
are seeking Indiana's Secretary of State. What personal journey or experience led you to this race?
So many things. Listening to people in a quote red district for 2 years, canvassing, making phone calls, doing all the things that local candidates do or should do. I've hear the same things over and over again. And a lot of it is we need more progress to be happening. We need things to be easier, not harder, especially when it comes to what our tax dollars are being spent on. Last October, Diego Morales purged 585,000 voters. And as that was happening leading up to the November election, that's when I started like really paying attention to that office. Because before, like many things, I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm running a statewide race. Like, I would not do that to myself. But then after the election and knowing we lost our top state races by about 500,000 voters, those numbers didn't really add up well to me. We purged 585,000. We lost key races by 500,000. That seems corrupt. It seems fishy. I have no proof of this, of course. Um, but to me, on top of knowing that we're 50 out of 51 for voter turnout, the problem is the Secretary of State's office, and not just current, but also historical. Why don't we have voter information coming to us from the Secretary of State's office? Why isn't it mandatory or funded for our clerks to send us stuff? Now, some clerks in Indiana do, but not all of the county clerks do. Um, because it seems like it's just a simple advertising thing. If you tell people about the election, perhaps they vote. And that doesn't happen. And I think it's my opinion that is intentional. If you only allow a few people who have access to internet, news, certain media, and they know in the Secretary of State's office that the demographic they're shooting for are older, white, and affluent. Well, those are the people who want to keep their money, and that's who the Republicans target. And those are the people who benefit. Anyone who has $1 million or more in the bank, they are benefiting from this administration and they're benefiting from the tax brackets that are currently in place. So you and I are paying more taxes, more percentage. And the wealthy people are paying less and they tend to vote Republican to keep more of their money. So it seems like our metrics for environment could change if we knew who was on our ballot and who we were voting for. Schools. There's a lot of things that have gone really, really wrong this year with Senate Bill 1 and Braun and the Trump administration. And I know I can affect good change for everybody, not just Democrats, not just Republicans, people who will be 18, people who've never voted, people who are worried about voting, right? Like it can kind of be an overwhelming process if you've never done it before. And been told our whole lives, at least I have, your vote doesn't matter. We're a Republican state. Well, that's not true. And so it's partially an experiment. I'm going to run on the things I hear people saying and have heard them saying for several years. I'm going to run on the values I believe in, which align with a lot of what people are saying on both sides of the aisle. Um, and we're going to give it our all because if things don't change next year, I don't know that, and I'm not saying if I don't win, if by and large we don't have a lot of change happening with our legislature and our governance, and I'm not just saying just Democrats, like we need Republicans to hold themselves accountable. We need Democrats to hold themselves accountable and actually follow the party values, which relies heavily on human rights. If things do not improve in this state, I'm not sure we can continue to raise our daughter here. And I don't even know if it's a safe place for us to stay. It's becoming unaffordable. Access to healthcare. I haven't had a steady healthcare provider for years because they are leaving the state. And I'm in a financially good, better position than a lot of people. So we've got to change it. And I think it starts with voting.
Secretary of State, you'd oversee election administration. What immediate reforms would you implement to ensure elections are fair, transparent, and trustworthy in Indiana?
Just mostly sharing information. What are we doing? How are we setting up these elections? We've had poll workers shortages, specifically in Hendricks County. I'm sure it was elsewhere as well. So let's start getting poll workers. 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds who are in high school, they can get an excused day of absence for helping to work the polls. Why aren't we advertising that more? If we can get our youth on the end side, the user end side of voting, like what does it look like behind the scenes? How does this really work? When they turn 18, they're going to feel a lot more confident walking into a polling location or even filling out an absentee ballot and casting a vote because knowledge is power, right? And if we prevent people from knowing how they can engage with it, and poll workers, they have to live in the community they serve. So if they're being paid, it's actually helping the community financially too, because a lot of that money will likely stay within the county of the workers. Um, so just I'm a pretty I'm kind of one of those TMI to transparent people anyway. Um, so I would like to do that as much as possible, as much as legally possible with the elections because people need to know what's happening. They're spending their tax dollars on this. Let's tell them how it works.
Indiana currently ranks very low in voter turnout. What concrete strategies would you use to raise that ranking, especially among underrepresented communities?
So I'm good at being a pain in the butt. I don't know if you've noticed this. I'm a little obnoxious sometimes. I'd really like to work. Well, first and foremost would be making sure there's a budget to send information to every registered voter about the upcoming elections. Voter pamphlet, when the election is, typical open hours for the polls, location sites, where to find information about voting, who's going to be on your ballot, a short blurb about those candidates, what their goals are for that office, what that office does. Many people don't know how valuable a township trustee is and how really powerful they are and how much help they could bring or not to our communities. Because the lower it is on the ballot, literally the closer it is to home. So we need people to be paying attention to these seats and knowing how important it is. Um, but also, ideally, in a perfect world, with that pamphlet, booklet, whatever you want to call it, um, would also be an absentee ballot. That gives people time they can look over the pamphlet if they have access to internet. They can look up more information if they need it. As a municipal candidate in a red county, it's been really hard historically to find information on Republicans because they don't have to share it. They have an R by their name. They automatically are going to win. They don't need websites. They don't need social media. They don't even need to answer the League of Women Voters and questions. They don't need to show up at town halls. So they're intentionally excluding information from voters by doing that. And I want to take away that ability. But it's not just I'm not trying to necessarily harm Republican electeds or politicians. I want them to be able to share what they are running on. I also think that could help grassroots and people powered candidates like myself who don't have a certain last name or millions of dollars at my disposal. That gives me a little bit more opportunity to get in front of every registered voter, even if it's just a sentence. So that would be the first place I start. And voter purges, I think they do need to be done regularly, but let's do it within a timely fashion and let's let people know this is happening. If you have moved and need to update your registration or if you've changed your name, do it now. Send the postcards. We know that those are possible. Diego did that recently. We all got those postcards in the mail. So just being better about sharing information with our voting population.
Many criticize the current in-biz business registration systems as confusing and outdated. How would you modernize those systems and how would you prioritize it?
Well, I am an end user of the NBiz website because I am a small business owner. I have navigated that site many times. And well before Diego was elected, the site was still a little clunky. So I'm not a web designer by nature, but I would start by anyone on the NBiz website we can push out emails to, let's send them a survey. What could be done better? What have you noticed that needs to be fixed? So we'll see what the end users think first, because oftentimes we make these decisions in politics or otherwise, and we're not considering what's the end result of this? Who is using this information? So I would poll them first, and then let's just make it a little more intuitive. I would also really like to start protecting our data better. Diego Morales just gave all of our data to the DOJ for registered voters. But I suspect, and I have no proof on this, but I get a lot of emails, texts, and phone calls from sites that likely had access to information from the Secretary of State's office through NBiz. I want to cut that off. People they can opt in if they want their data to be distributed or sold, that they should not have to look for a way to opt out. We need to be protecting Hoosiers' data. And also with my MBA, not only am I doing administration with work, but I have that master's focused on conscious capitalism. So with the NBiz website, I'd like to have some free resources where business owners, business managers, or any other Hoosier who wants to have a more sustainable lifestyle, give them free information on how to do that. Switching to biodegradable bamboo toilet paper in your place of work, or maybe it's water safe toilet bowl cleaner. Like just things that make our environmental outcomes better from the business side, because conscious capitalism focuses on not just shareholders, the people who want the money, but also the stakeholders, people like you and me. The voters are the stakeholders of this office. How are we treating them? How are our businesses treating their environment, their community, their employees, right? So trying to bring more awareness to doing business better so that we do actually have a planet and a state in the future that is worth investing in.
The SAVE Act and other restrictive voting laws are controversial.
Yep.
What is your approach to legislation or regulation that affects voting access, early voting, absentee ballots, and student voting?
Keep it simple. Students should be allowed to use their college IDs. These children, much like you and I, spent tens of thousands of dollars to be in a community in our state to get an education. So I think they should be allowed to do that. Student IDs don't come if you have not enrolled and invested in that school. Yeah, they're in the community. They should have a say in who's governing that community, because it's not like they just stay on campus. These kids are driving around these communities, walking, and etc. So yes, that just got taken away recently, as did the BMV is no longer required to ask people to update their voter registration. I think that is complete horse crap. And if my tax dollars is helping pay BMV workers, I want them to also help me make sure that if I need to update my registration, it's being updated. And I also want that registration update to happen immediately, because I cannot tell you how many people said, I just updated it at the BMV and it didn't get sent in last year. I'm not going to speculate on why that happened, but I've heard it more than once. And hearing it even one time is unacceptable. Voter ID laws in Indiana weren't a thing until 2000. Now we have to have the real ID, which puts a big barrier in place predominantly for women, because if you've been divorced or married, you have to have all of that documentation and your birth certificate. And it's voter suppression, right? Like we should be able to register to vote, have our name on a voter roll in our community, and just be done with it. I mean, God forbid you move in November. God forbid you lose your ID in the late October, right? Like all of these little things, human stuff happens. We are all very busy. It needs to be done simpler. I think we've been told by the Republicans that voter tampering, voter fraud, it's like the smallest of percentage if it happens. So that is one of the many lies coming from the Republicans that needs to stop. Um, Absentee ballots, I don't think we should have to have an excuse. It should be a human right in 2025 to vote. If we can have a felon in the presidential office and he can vote, we should all be able to vote. That's just my opinion on that. The SAVE Act is atrocious. Um, so anyone listening, the SAVE Act, to the best of my knowledge, is still sitting in the Senate. I'm sure they are waiting until they really desperately need to pass that next year to help, which means that your passport and ID needs to match your birth certificate. One, not everyone has access to their birth certificate. To be able to afford time and money to get said birth certificate is a barrier to entry for voting. And two, it's just dumb. I Obviously my name is not going to match my certificate because I was born with a different last name than my married name. They're attacking the global majority. They're attacking women. They're attacking the LGBTQ plus community or anyone who has chosen or decided to change their name. And that's all there is to it. So I hate it. There's not much I could do about that. Um, but I would work very hard to prevent that from hitting Hoosiers. And I would work with the legislature to I want to remove straight ticket voting. I want to remove the parameters for absentee ballots. I would love to see ranked choice voting a thing on primary and general elections. And I would love for our primaries to be so open that we get to, now, if they need to be registered a something, they can identify that when they pull a primary ballot. But that primary ballot should have Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Green Party, or anyone else who is in a primary competition on that ballot, and we should be able to vote for every single office, rank choice. If I'm going to be stuck being governed by Republicans, I deserve a say in who is going to be on that November ballot. And vice versa. If Republicans are going to be governed by Democrats, they should have a say in how they prefer those people get their vote or votes. And it just makes it more equitable and it benefits Hoosiers, not just Republicans, not just Democrats, not just independents, not just grassroots candidates, not just legacy candidates. It will benefit everybody because we all have the same choices. And other states are doing it. There is no reason why we can't.
As a small business owner, how do you plan to use the experience to reform the Secretary of State's business services?
I'm a firm believer, and I'm sure plenty plenty of people will disagree with my management style, but I do feel that I'm very fair and equitable, even if it doesn't benefit the people who might dislike my decisions. But we're only as strong as our weakest link. So we need to be paying attention to the most underserved people in our state to make sure that they have access to the things that they need access from any office. But obviously, that would be focusing on the Secretary of State's office. We have population about 6.9 million in Indiana. 10% of that population has no internet access. So if these individuals want to open a business or want to update voter registration, they don't have access to it easily. So we need to make sure that in some capacity, the Secretary of State's office is sending something. And I'm not a fan of paper. I do support our postal workers and the postal worker unions. So it's not my favorite thing to send things via mail, but that's the most equitable way. If you are a Hoosier resident, maybe once every other year, every resident gets information about how to connect with the Secretary of State's office, whether it be InBiz website, and give them information about how to find access to that if they don't have access to the internet. But same with voter registration and things like that. We just need to be. I think that's transparency, and that's our tax dollars working for all of us.
Ethics and transparency are recurring themes in your campaign. How will you ensure your office resist partisan influence, no bid contracts, or misuse of power?
That is a great question. I fully expect to be held accountable. I call my electeds regularly. I call them out regularly. And I hope that people will hold me accountable, whether they be employees of the office or constituents or both. Um, I need to be able to take criticism and hear other people's ideas. And I say all of this knowing that maybe I get in office and there's going to be a better idea. Maybe Derrick has a better idea. I'm open to listening to what's going to function the best financially and in action, right? Like we need these voter pamphlets to work. What is the best way to do this? What is the most sustainable way to do this? What's the most equitable way to do this? If John Smith is in a nursing home and he's 90 years old and doesn't have access to the internet, how am I getting him to vote? If Susie, Sally May is 18 and in a rural community with no internet, but she really wants to start a farm stand and wants to start an LLC. How are we going to make that happen for her? So just being able, and maybe this is surveys. Maybe that's where I start. I put my platform in survey form, send it to Hoosiers, make it available online. Let's decide this together. This isn't a me deciding everything for everybody. This is us. Like our vote and our tax dollars needs to work for us, not just Blythe Potter. So I'm open to hearing things, and I think that will hold me accountable.
What role should the Secretary of State play in protecting election security against foreign interference, cyber attacks, disinformation, and voter data breaches?
A huge role. It is vital to have safe elections, and it is vital to have trust from our constituents and our citizens. And I will be completely honest with you, Derrick. There is so much distrust in politics and politicians, and I'm skeptical too. I'm skeptical of Democrats too. I fully expect people to be skeptical of me, just because of the environment we are in politically and have been for so long. Um, I don't have a great answer for that other than it needs to be safe and we need to prevent interference. So I will hope to hire people who are significantly better suited to figure that out than I will be. I'm tech savvy. I'm not tech savvy enough to be like, all right, Russia, we're putting up our cyber walls so you can't bust into our databases. So, um, and maybe that's something we have someone appointed or hired. And the people who are on the list to be hired, we have maybe public input. Why not? I think that's a good way to have more secure or more transparent staff is by saying, okay, here are our candidates. These are also going to be your public servants. Your tax dollars are paying for them. Tell us who you like and why.
How do you plan to coordinate with county clerks and local election officials, particularly in rural or underfunded counties, to ensure consistent standards and resources?
That is a great question. So one of the things on my platform is to hopefully start a pilot initiative where the Secretary of State's office can help fund local clerks getting out information about their local elections. I would love for that to be on the local level. If that's not possible, I will listen to the clerks. If they don't think that's something they want to add to their plate, we'll figure it out from the Secretary of State's office. Um, but start with a survey and start with a conversation. If they will sit down with me and have a transparent, candid conversation about what support they need from the office, I want to listen to them because they are going to know better. I'm going to get to all 92 counties, but I'm not going to have eyes and ears in every corner. The people who are running the clerk's offices, the people who were elected to do that locally, they are going to have the best ideas on how we can support them. So, really just listening to them and trying the best with the budget that we're working with to make it possible. Um, I'm a rural resident. I live in rural Johnson County. I grew up in rural Marion County, and I know what it means to be in a rural community and lack access and funding for things. So I really want to change that.
Yeah, I mean, like, how can one size fits all when you have counties like Lake County, Marion County, Allen County,
Mhm.
Vandenberg counties, you know, big cities, Vigo, or Vigo, however you want to pronounce it.
They might pronounce it differently depending on who you ask, is
Exactly.
what I've heard.
But how are you gonna compare those counties with, the big cities in
Mhm.
Indiana to a Morgan, a Davies,
Brown County.
Jasper?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do a one size fits all for all these counties. So
No.
how do you is it something like what you've said where you send out a survey to each one of the 92 clerks and just find out exactly what that county needs?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Well, first, I would want to sit down with them just so we can meet face to face. I do want to be able to build rapport with all of the clerks, regardless of how they identify politically, because clerks' offices and Secretary of State, we would govern everybody. These are nonpartisan issues. These are these are Hoosier rights. These are Hoosier tax dollars funding these offices. So they should not, in my opinion, be partisan, but we are where we are, right? So yeah, surveys to the clerks, but I also think it would be valuable to have surveys that the constituents could also answer. Because again, they are the end users. Have you ever gotten like a new tripod or a new car or a new computer and you're like, did anyone actually like use this after they made it before they sold it to see if it functions the way they think it will? Because it doesn't, it's so frustrating. Um, that could just be how my brain works. Like I'll get something like, oh, this could be done better. This is stupid. So I think it would be valuable to hear everybody's input. If you live in the state of Indiana, even if you're not a registered voter, you're still paying for these services. Your voice should be heard.
Do you support automatic or same day voter registration in Indiana? Why or why not?
I do because people move and people are busy. And historically, elections sneak up on us because the elections are not advertised and we don't have information about it. So sometimes people find out right before an election that tomorrow is election day. And oh, by the way, they have an hour, but they moved last year and they didn't, like, life happens. So, and again, I don't know what that looks like. What are the best practices in the states who allow for same day voter registration? What does that look like? How do we accommodate that? How do we make it safe? How do we make it fair? How do we make it transparent? And how do we make it legit, right? So people aren't just hopping from county to county and voting wherever they want to vote. Um, maybe that means they bring pieces of mail that are dated recently or a bill. They can show us a utility bill with their address from the last 30 days. I don't know what that looks like, but I think we can figure it out. It can't be that difficult.
What checks and balances should be in place to ensure that decisions by your office are transparent and accountable?
Hmm. That is also a really good question. I don't know. I think that might also be something worth asking constituents about. Other than sharing information, making it available online as we do it, um, live streaming certain meetings or decisions, sharing information on social media. I don't know. I think that would be a good survey question. Again, end users aren't always as politically savvy or knowledgeable as you and I, and the only reason I am knowledgeable or savvy is because I'm learning it mostly as I go. So, I don't wanna expect people to know how things function when I'm gonna get in that office, and I will have a lot to learn. That's the nature of a new job. You will have learning curves. Um, so to be determined, but I am open to considering whatever makes people have trust in the office. We have got to find a way for people. I really want boring back in our politics again, where we know that these people aren't perfect, but they have our best interests at heart and they're doing the job that they can in the safest, most transparent way.
If a future Secretary of State tries to use the office for personal or partisan advantage, how would your tenure guard against such an abuse?
Oh, I plan to be vocal and loud until the day I die. And then I might try to find a way to do that beyond the grave. I'll call him out. And to any in any capacity, when we can make these changes, I don't want to end up here ever again where I'm worried about my rights to vote being taken away. So we have got to find a way. And again, this will involve working with the legislature. Secretary of State Blythe Potter will not be able to do all of these things. How do we change it so that we have ballot initiatives without having to wait 2 sessions? How do we change it so that our state constitution says everybody over the age of 18 who is a resident of this state has the right to vote? How do we make that happen? We work with the legislature to pass those laws. Um, and let's pretend I get elected and don't run for reelection or don't want to run for reelection or run for reelection and lose. Um, the things that seemed to be the most popular from our constituents, not from my head and my ideas and what I want, from what voters say they want. How are we going to make sure that those things happen if I don't make them happen or stay in place if I get them in place? I don't know what that looks like because we have a lot of like the redistricting that goes against our constitution of the state of Indiana and they're looking at it anyway. So I don't have a good answer for that. How do we trust the constitution of our state and country anymore when it's not being abided by now? Yeah, I'll hold them accountable.
Given that Indiana Secretary of State has responsibilities beyond the elections, how would you manage and prioritize those functions? For example, business services, notaries, trademarks, vehicle dealership licensing.
Yeah. Just keep them up to date. Again, listen to the end users. If I have n I am not a notary public. It's been something I've been meaning to do for a long time, especially
It's
now that I'm
not that
running for that.
difficult. I am
I know,
old,
but
please don't
it's just a
2030.
matter of doing it, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk to the end users. How are we making this more streamlined and accessible? Do we have a list of all the notary publics in which area? How do we contact them? Maybe we start a database so it's easier for people to find this. I cannot tell you how many times I'm like, oh man, I need a notary public. Oh, the bank is closed. Oh, you have to go to this bank. Like, let's let's ask the end users. Like, what kind of maintenance do we need to do throughout the year or throughout my term to make sure that these are accessible and up to date?
What role does civic education and voter literacy play in your vision? How do
Oh,
you plan to invest in those areas? You've touched on it before,
mhm.
candidate guidebooks, school outreach, public awareness.
Yeah. Working with local media, working with social media, working with schools, working with clerks. This there should be there should be some sort of like permanent billboard somewhere that says you have X number of days until the next election. I don't know what that looks like, but again, and those ideas that I have, I could easily be missing something. There could be someone like, no, this would be way easier. Tell me. Like, tell me what I need to know to make this easier for people. Um, but sharing information is so powerful. Outside of the voter guides and having it on the website and making sure that the clerks in each of the counties have access to either linking websites or having it on their website. Um, Working with media and other ways people get information, really.
Now, the Secretary of State's office, along with the treasurer and state auditor, aren't your normal primary positions where normal Joe Hoosier would be able to vote for during the primary.
Mhm.
How is that position nominated?
So we'll have a convention. Ours will be on June 6th. And if you are a registered Democrat, you can go to your local clerk's office on January 7th, between January 7th and February. I should know this date, sometime in February, to fill out what's called a CAN 37, CAN, I believe it stands for Candidate Form 37. And they can sign up to be a delegate. So, for instance, last year, Johnson County had 36 delegate spots open. So, 36 people went on the primary ballot last year to be elected as a delegate. Not all counties will print a ballot if they don't reach that full number. But those are dates you should certainly put in your calendar if you would like to go to the convention to vote for me. Um, and then you'll go. It's kind of a long day. They break people up into their congressional districts. I'm in congressional district 6, so we would all be in one room. They'll do some congressional district business with our chairs and vice chair, our leadership for the congressional districts. And then myself and the other candidates will bop around each one and have a little speech and be like, vote for me. And then we'll all go together in one big space. And there'll be some more speeches and some reflecting memory wall stuff, and then some more speeches. And then we vote, and then they announce the winner. And then there's probably more stuff after that. But so it's a bit of a long day in Indianapolis, but well worth it. Please come. I would love to see everybody there who wants to vote for me.
Yeah, I last year was the first one that I had ever been to, and it was a blast. Just seeing everybody there. It was the first chance I had to meet my fellow candidates for Congress,
Oh,
and
wow.
we actually formed a pretty good bond. We still talk to this day
Nice.
about issues and everything like that. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's a great day, and at the end, balloons. That's all you have to say.
Oh, yes, there were balloons. I forgot about the balloons. That's so funny.
And if you can get through the waiting to actually vote, because that was an issue last year.
That was an
So
issue.
hopefully it's better
I
this year.
mean, I'm very conflicted on this. Like, part of me really does love that we get people who are interested enough to partake in a convention and get all of the congressional districts and all the party leadership in one space at one time is really cool. But I also do really wish the general public were able to participate more. So I'm very conflicted on that. Um, I don't know how we change that or if
I
we
believe that would have to be a
should.
state referendum
I
to
think you're
put
right because both
those 3
parties do it.
positions, the attorney general, and
Governor, lieutenant
secondly, the
governor.
lieutenant governor. Um, I mean, I always
Yep.
thought lieutenant governor was kinda like vice president, where the governor chose who they wanted to be their running mate.
Yep.
Um, so that was a shocker last year. You really don't know some of these things until you actually run for office. Um, I mean, if you wanna know how the sausage is made, run for office.
I'm actually glad you said that because I want to add to my previous question about voter education. With our voter handbooks, or maybe in addition to, I would really love for people to have information on how they get involved in local parties, how they can be a precinct chair. What is a precinct chair? Why are they important? How do you be a precinct vice chair? How do you be a candidate on the ballot? I mean, wouldn't that be mind blowing if we had information about that and didn't have to just stumble across it because we're tired of things being like done the way we have been doing them? Um, how do you get involved with your local party? Why aren't we doing that? Don't we want more of our constituents and our neighbors to be involved in our politics? Like, I think that part of the education piece needs to be there as well, on how to engage as a candidate or a precinct chair or a delegate and explain some of these processes better. And every year, right? Like maybe we update that every year, every 4 years, because we forget.
Yeah. So we've come to the point where I love to kind of throw every candidate under the bus.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
It is going to be a series of yes or no questions, no explanation. So a
Okay.
rapid fire round.
Okay.
Do you support automatic voter registration in Indiana?
Yes.
Should Indiana expand early voting beyond the current period?
Yes.
Do you support same day voter registration?
Yes.
Should college student IDs be accepted as valid voter identification in Indiana?
Yes.
Would you oppose efforts to shorten voting hours on election day?
Yes.
Should the Secretary
Oppose
of State?
shortening the hours, like taking away hours, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay, just make sure I'm hearing that right. Like,
yes.
yeah, yes.
Should the Secretary of State's office be barred from accepting corporate donations?
Yes.
Do you support an independent redistricting commission for Indiana?
Yes.
Should Indiana join the states that allow no excuse absentee voting for everyone?
Yes.
Do you believe foreign disinformation poses a serious threat to Indiana elections?
Yes.
If you lose, will you accept the results of this election without contest?
Yes. And I will hold whomever the candidate is accountable. And I want to add too that you reminded me, I think that getting voter pamphlets out increases voter turnout. Therefore, it makes gerrymandering and redistricting not as not as important for the Republicans. And I think it can help keep some of the money out of politics on its own because more people will have information.
That was Blythe Potter, Democratic candidate for Indiana Secretary of State. Whether you agree with her politics or not, one thing is clear: the job she's running for matters. The Secretary of State isn't just about elections, it's about trust, transparency, making sure democracy works for everyone. If you like this conversation, hit subscribe on YouTube or follow us on Spotify so you don't miss future interviews with candidates, activists, and everyday Hoosiers working to make a difference. Because at the end of the day, we can't fix what we don't talk about. That's why we're here, to hold them accountable. I'm Derrick Holder, and I'll see you next time.